Body am I, and soul. Thus speaks the child. The child says, I am body and soul. And why should one not speak like children? Good question. That's Nietzsche asking. Or is it Zarathustra, possibly? I mean, it's not in quotes, Zarathustra quotes, but you can't tell. P-R-Y-Y-H-O. P-R-P-P-Y-H-O, I think. Pyrrho. P-Y-R-R-H-O. Is doing a video response, set of responses, I think. He's only put one up as of this videotape. And he's made me just a bit nervous. He says, don't equate what Nietzsche says with what Zarathustra says.
Yeah, I do caution that, and have cautioned that a couple times. And mostly what comes out of Zarathustra's mouth is a pretty good indication of what Nietzsche's thinking in this story. But it's kind of like in Atlas Shrugged, the Dagny character is a lot like the voice of Ayn Rand. But as a character in fiction, she makes mistakes that Ayn isn't going to make. But Ayn uses her to illustrate. I mean, whereas Ayn has figured out before she even wrote the book that, the John Galt's view, Dagny is very, very slow to come to that view. And that's the kind of thing we see with Zarathustra. Yeah, he's telling a lot of the things Nietzsche believes, but then again, he's learning a lesson in this story that Nietzsche's already learned. Okay, so that's all I mean. So it's worth being careful when the interpretations get fine-tuned and this sort of difference matters.
But the awakened and knowing body say, body am I entirely and nothing else, and soul is only a word for something about the body. Your body and its great reason. That does not say I, but does I.
These 2 points or claims of Zarathustra are of a special interest to me because I believe it is possible simply to do what is advised here, which is one is to make clear in our mind that the soul, as a word, can be said to refer to something, and it's some characteristic of the body. And this is really important. We don't have to give up idea that there are behaviors that are soulful, say, or that they're spiritual experiences. We simply have to give up the idea that they have something to do with another world rather than this world. They have to do with this world. And also, I agree very much with the notion that I is something that we do. It's not something that we be. We don't just statically be anything. We are changing all the time. And the concept of I as a characteristic of a system, this idea, is an idea about something in motion, about a system. And the concept of I is about something we are doing. And so I especially like those 2 quotes.
Your self laughs at your ego and at its bold leaps. What are these leaps and flights of thought to me? A detour to my end. I am the leading strings of the ego and the prompter of its concepts. The self then says to the ego, feel pain here, right in this place. Then the ego suffers and thinks how it might suffer no more, and that is why it is made to think. The self says to the ego, feel pleasure here. Then the ego is pleased and thinks how it might often be pleased again, and that is why it is made to think.
Okay, now it's not right to think that he's saying the ego is a puppet of the self, because the ego has its own creative job in that, right? It's trying to think, wait, how can I suffer no more? And how can I have more of that pleasure, which the self is generating. So the self is reacting and defining what's good and bad, basically, from the point of view of the ego. But the ego does put in its own service. It is trying to be the thing that actually strings together, pleasurable experiences or what have you. So when, so it's not a puppet on a string thing per se, but obviously, it's the self that's laying the groundwork, and I agree with this. I agree with this view of this psychological metaphor, let's say.
I want to speak to the despisers of the body. Even in your folly and contempt, you despisers of the body, you serve yourself. That is what it would do above all else, create something beyond itself. That is its fervent wish. But now it is too late for it to do this, so yourself wants to go under. Oh, despisers of the body. Yourself wants to go under, and that is why you have become despisers of the body. It looks like he just reversed it. Which one causes the other? He says that despising yourself causes you to not have this ability to create something beyond yourself, or is it not believing you can create something beyond yourself which leads you to despise the body? I think he just said it both ways, and I don't think he can have it both ways.
Well, on the one hand, he can't have it both ways because it's what you call a vicious cycle. The one leads to the other, leads back to the one, and so forth. But if you really want to linearize it, I think you can pretty much figure out the big picture of what he's saying is that it comes from the feeling that you can't do anything beyond yourself, or you can't accomplish. In other words, it comes from a feeling of weakness that then you despise life, and that's the real root of that cycle. But it is a vicious cycle, and I think that's why he was so willing to state it in this way. But also in general, with Nietzschean contradictions, he believed things could come from their opposites. And it's a very interesting topic, actually, how things and if things come from their opposites, and the sense in which they do, perhaps the sense in which they don't. But he definitely believed things could come from their opposites. So you see a lot of his contradictions are set up like that, because really, in his point of view, they're sort of balances. A pode and its antipode develop together. So they balance. Not necessarily balance in a healthy way either, but they're just antipositional.
Shall not go your way, O despisers of the body. You are no bridge. Thus spoke Zarathustra. On to the next section, on enjoying and suffering the passions. Suffering them. It's more than just enjoying the passions. They actually can be negative. Thus spoke Zarathustra.